What Michael B. Jordan said on live television shocked all of America. Nobody saw it coming, and it started so casually that no one even noticed the mood beginning to shift. It was supposed to be a relaxed late-night interview, one of those studio tapings where a famous actor smiles through familiar questions, makes a few jokes, maybe drops a teaser about an upcoming film, and exits to polite applause. But something felt different tonight. Michael walked in calm and composed, wearing a dark tailored suit, nodding politely to the crowd, but his expression carried a weight that didn't match the light-hearted tone of the host's opening monologue. The interview started off innocently. Questions about his fitness routine, a funny story about filming in the desert, the usual back and forth. But then, about 10 minutes in, the interviewer leaned in and asked, "So Michael, you've seen a lot of the world through your career. But is America still home? Do you still love living here?" There was a pause, not the kind of pause people use to think about what to say, but the kind that comes when someone's already decided and is wondering whether to actually go through with it. He looked away for a second, adjusted the mic clipped to his jacket, and then leaned forward, and what he said next shifted the room from warm laughter to dead silence. "To be honest with you, America just doesn't feel like home anymore." The host blinked, smiled awkwardly, and laughed, waiting for the punchline that never came. "I mean it," Michael continued. "I've been thinking about this a long time. The way things are going here, the things I see, the way people are treated depending on who they are or what they look like. I'm tired. I don't want to live like this forever." The audience was stunned. Some thought it was part of a bit. Others glanced at each other uncomfortably, not sure how to respond. But Michael didn't break eye contact with the host, who suddenly looked unsure of himself. The studio crew hesitated, not knowing whether to cut to commercial. He added, "I'm planning on leaving. Not tomorrow, not next week. But it's coming." There was no anger in his voice, just a slow, deliberate disappointment, the kind that cuts deeper than rage. Social media exploded within minutes, clips of the moment going viral before the interview had even ended, and reactions ranged from disbelief to fury to solidarity. People debated whether he had the right to say what he said, whether it was ungrateful, brave, disrespectful, or just honest. But Michael didn't clarify, didn't tweet a follow-up, didn't issue a press release. He simply stood up before the interview ended, shook the host's hand, nodded once to the crowd, and walked off stage without another word, leaving behind a silence that no one in the room quite knew how to fill. And yet, something about the way he said it, the conviction in his voice, made it impossible to dismiss or forget. There was no finality to it, just a feeling that something much bigger was coming, and that whatever it was, it wouldn't be confined to one night in a studio. Michael B. Jordan's words hung in the air like smoke, slow to vanish, thick with the weight of something far more than just an opinion. What he said next made it clear that this wasn't a passing mood or a calculated press moment. He shifted in his seat, exhaled, and said with startling clarity, "I'll be real with you. America? I'm tired of it. I want to move to another country." He didn't name the place, didn't hint at where or when or why specifically, but the message was unmistakable. This wasn't symbolic. This was personal. The audience gasped audibly, and even the host looked momentarily stunned, as if the script had been torn in half and no one had a backup plan. The reaction was immediate. Social media, producers in the control room, the live studio audience, everyone in disbelief. This was a man born and raised in America, someone who had built a career on its stages and screens, who had once called it home with pride, and now he was sitting under bright lights saying he was done. The host, struggling to recover, asked, "But how can you say that? You were born here, your whole life is here." Michael didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't even soften his tone. "That's exactly why I can say it," he answered, "because I know it too well. I've seen too much, experienced too much, and honestly, I've just had enough. It doesn't feel like home. Not anymore." The host glanced toward the producers off camera, uncertain whether to steer things back or dig deeper. But before he could say more, Michael stood up. "This interview's boring anyway," he said, not raising his voice, but making sure it was heard. "I'm out." With that, he calmly stepped away from the chair, pulled off the mic, and walked off stage without looking back. There was no music, no applause, no outro. Just silence, and then murmurs, whispers, a kind of confused awe spreading across the audience. 5 minutes passed, not long by normal standards, but on live television it felt eternal. The host tried to salvage things, laughing nervously, stalling for time, looking off camera for any signal of what to do, but nothing worked. Everyone watching felt the weight of it. This wasn't a stunt or a breakdown or some publicity game. It was raw, it was unscripted, and it was unfinished. That's what made it so gripping. People were refreshing their phones, waiting to see if he'd post something, explain something, say anything. Commentators speculated wildly, headlines began forming before the broadcast even ended, but something in the atmosphere felt unsettled, like this was just the beginning of something much bigger than a bad interview. The quiet was louder than the shock. And then someone in the control room whispered, almost to themselves, "What if he comes back?" Because there was something in the way he left, casual on the surface, but with a tension just beneath it, like a note held too long. No one moved. The host shuffled his notes, still unsure what was happening. The audience stayed seated, the cameras kept rolling. Everyone was waiting. For what? They weren't sure, but they knew they'd know it when it happened. Michael had left something open, a door not quite shut, a space in the air that demanded something more. And though 5 minutes had already passed, it suddenly felt like everything worth seeing was still ahead. Exactly 5 minutes after the moment that had stunned a live audience and sent the internet into a tailspin, Michael B. Jordan walked back onto the stage with the same calm energy he'd left with, but this time he was smiling, and not the forced kind of smile that actors sometimes wear to mask discomfort, but something lighter, almost playful, like someone about to let everyone in on a secret. The host, caught between confusion and relief, looked up in disbelief as Michael casually approached the chair again, picked up the mic he'd left behind, and simply said, "That was a prank." There was a moment of absolute stillness, as if no one dared to laugh or react too soon, not sure if they were being toyed with again. But then the realization hit, and gasps turned into stunned laughter. Camera operators exchanged looks, and the audience erupted in a strange mix of disbelief and applause. "Of course I'm joking," he said, grinning now. "America's my favorite country. I love it here. I'm not going anywhere." It felt surreal, like the collective tension that had built up over the past 10 minutes was suddenly being let out in one giant exhale. The host leaned back, half laughing, half still processing, and said, "You got us. You really got us." And Michael just shrugged like it wasn't a big deal, like he hadn't just sparked a national conversation with a few sentences and a walk-off. But there was something calculated behind the ease, something deeper that made people lean in even more now. Because if that was a prank, then what was real? And why had it felt so true while it was happening? Still, the mood lightened, and the interview continued, this time with a new intensity, a kind of electricity that came from knowing that anything could happen. They asked him a few more personal questions, steering clear of anything too political, but still trying to get a sense of what had just occurred. Michael answered them all with a kind of relaxed charm, cracking jokes, telling stories about his childhood, and even making fun of himself for how serious he'd seemed minutes earlier. But as the show wound down and the host began to wrap up, Michael leaned in one last time and said something that stayed with people long after the cameras cut. "Look, this country's where I work. It's where I make movies. It's where I've met the people I love. And yeah, sometimes it frustrates me. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong, like things aren't changing fast enough, but I love it anyway." You can love something and still want it to be better. That's what home is. It was a quiet statement, not flashy, not dramatic, but the kind that sinks in slowly, the kind that feels more honest than any performance. They ended the show with handshakes and smiles, the audience clapping louder than before, not just because the prank was over, but because they'd been taken on a ride. One they hadn't expected, one that left them unsettled, then amused, then strangely moved. Outside the studio, the world was already reacting. Some still angry, others amused, most just fascinated. But underneath all the noise, there was one thing no one could deny. Michael B. Jordan had captured everyone's attention, and whatever this was, whatever it meant, it wasn't the last time he'd make people stop and listen. There was more coming. You could feel it.